You've got it tuned into the Zealous Podcast. I'm your host, Rocky Snyder, and this week I've got Victor Cruz with me. He's a strength conditioning coach for the Tampa Bay Rays. I know baseball's coming to an end. We're in the playoff season, and, well, Victor's got a little time on his hands, shall we say. We're going to talk all about conditioning in the minors with the Tampa Bay Rays organization. But before we get underway, remember you can go to my website, rockysnyder.com, and get online CEU credits for the courses that we offer on our website, but also in-person courses like the one coming up at the beginning of next month, November 3rd, posture-based soft tissue mobilization. How do we get the body back into a more realigned position through using the foam roller? Well, you got to know where they start to get to where they want to be. And this course is all about that. Just go to rockysnyder.com. You can sign up there. And don't forget also, Satanta College is the place to go for your Master's of Science degree, whether it's applied sports biomechanics and movement science, applied sport and exercise psychology, performance coaching, or sports injury and return to performance management. Satanta College has 4 tracks for your interests. Just go to satantacollege.com, enter the code RS10, that stands for Rocky Snyder 10% off tuition with that code RS10. Follow us on Instagram at Rocky_Snyder and click the subscribe button. Enjoy the conversation.
Well, Victor, first, thanks for coming on the Zealous Podcast. It's a joy to have you here.
Rocky, good to be here. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, well, I've had quite a few of your colleagues at Tampa Bay and with the Rays, whether it be Andrew Mitchell or other guys that are in the organization. And you guys are always open to having conversations compared to other teams, which I won't remark on. But there are some teams that just don't open their doors very well. But Tampa, you guys just welcome me in. So I appreciate that. Tell you what, let's kick it off by giving me a little background story of where you grew up, how you got into strength conditioning. I'm sure you played baseball. Give me the whole rundown.
Yeah, nice. So the old elevator pitch.
There you go.
So kind of first memories in life for me were playing catch with my dad in the backyard. Baseball is my first love. So, played all the way through college, played 6 years of college baseball. Kind of somewhere along the line, probably in high school, I fell in love with the weight room, and you realize like you can get better on the field by doing things off the field. And for me, it was just, kind of fell in love with the weight room and training. And I went to Rowan University in New Jersey, played 4 years of baseball there. Then I grad transferred, went to East Stroudsburg in Pennsylvania, got my master's in exercise science. And like I said, ended up playing 6 years of college baseball. So COVID was kind of a blessing for me. It gave me more eligibility and more time to play and be a kid. And
how did that work? How did you get to play more because of COVID?
Yeah, it was a weird situation. So Rowan University's D3. I was born and raised in New Jersey, so I went to Rowan right there in New Jersey, and it was a D3 school. And I remember when COVID hit, it was our junior year. We played 6 games. We were 6-0, off to a good start. And then COVID hit and everything was just shut down. So that year was kind of banged. And then my senior year, we came back and we didn't play any out of conference games. So we really only played on the weekends. And then when playoffs came around, we played playoffs. So whatever reason, the NCAA gave a blanket eligibility waiver for D3 and JUCO. The only levels they gave it to for that senior year, so the year after COVID. So I got super lucky. I had those 2 extra years, following my senior year. And it was funny because my senior year, we made a College World Series, and it was the most baseball games I've ever played in a year.
Really?
So I got super, super lucky and used the heck out of it. Ended up playing 2 more years.
I want to ask how you did during the World Series, but I'm afraid. What happened there?
So D3 College World Series, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which I think is the AAA affiliate for the Twins, maybe the Colonels.
Okay.
But yeah, that's where we played. We were 2-out, unfortunately. But the experience and the memories that you make, with the teammates and the guys and the coaches, like I still talk to those coaches and my teammates, all the time. So the 2-out was unfortunate. You want a ring, but the memories created was awesome.
Okay, so you go and have that experience, and then you finish up your grad at Stroudsburg, and then try and get into the draft or into a walk-on team, or where were you with your baseball career at that time?
Yeah, so kind of kind of where I was at. So after my senior year at Rowan, so that College World Series year, a lot of guys will go and play summer ball in the summer in a college summer league, and I said to myself after my senior year, if I don't really make a name for myself, then I'm going to start to transition like my downtime towards strength and conditioning. I knew I wanted to do it as a career if professional baseball didn't work out. Um, and to me, making a name for myself was like talking to an MLB scout or a scout approaching me. Um, and, you know, here I am, right? So it never happened, which is fine. And I kind of started targeting my energy outside of, fall and spring baseball in college. I used the off seasons and I used the summers to pursue, strength conditioning internships and was super fortunate after my fifth year. So that was my first year at ESU, my fifth year of school. Right after that, I did a seasonal position with the Tampa Bay Rays. So it was weird. I was still playing baseball, but also had my foot in the door, quote unquote, in professional
Yeah.
baseball, which was kind of the goal. So finished up my summer, came back and played my last year of college baseball, already having, pro S&C experience, which was really cool. Um, Finished up my last year, just enjoyed it, soaked in every practice, every moment, because I knew it'd be over. And then after that, I kind of hit the ground running with the Rays, and now I'm going on to year four, which is crazy. So going on year four.
Well, yeah. So you started seasonal, then you went full time,
Mhm.
and then you kind of moved up the ranks. So for the last couple of years, you've been in uh, Port Charles. Did I get that right? Where are you right now?
Yeah, Port Charlotte.
Port Charlotte, and you're with AAA or minors. What teams are you overseeing in their organization?
Yeah, so the professional baseball structure is a beast. Where I've been at for my past 3 years is at our spring training complex in Port Charlotte, Florida, which is mainly our rookie ball guys. Also, guys who, a lot of people, including staff, come in and out of the complex throughout the year. But mainly I oversee our rookie ball players, as well as our new draft class when they sign in July, usually. They report directly to the spring training complex. So that's a whole nother, new group of athletes. As well as here, I don't oversee them directly, but as well as we have a rehab group. So anybody throughout the affiliate system will come down to our spring training complex and complete their rehab assignment and get healthy.
And so rookie being maybe as young as 18, but averaging about 20, 21, 22 years old.
I would say it's a huge Latin American presence. I want to
Oh,
I'm going to say 80 to 90%. Before the draft guys get here. I want to say 80, 90% is Latin Americans that their first language is Spanish, and they're from Venezuela, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico. Um, and they kind of funnel in from our Dominican Republic Academy and up to the complex. But um, the learning Spanish over the past few years has been an awesome challenge, and I've become pretty good at it now. I wouldn't say fluent, but pretty good at it. So it's really cool building relationships with those guys and learning their cultures. But that's kind of what it's looked like for the past 3 years.
well, that's really cool. Plus, I mean, you're in a position within the organization where you can make tremendous strides and gains with your athletes, with your players, because they're at that stage in their life where they've got a lot more potential that you can start training into them compared to say, you're up in the majors and you're in the big time, and those guys are just looking for that last percentage or two to get them to just that little bit more to get them over the top. But for you, you've got almost, I won't say a blank canvas to work with, but imagining that 80% of them are from Latin America or South America, where the strength conditioning may not be as prevalent. I mean, you get some of these guys, I can only imagine, they're entering the weight room or conditioning clinics for the first time, maybe ever. Is that true?
Yep, that is true. It's really cool when you take a big picture look at it and kind of see what
Yeah.
you need to do. I mean, a lot of these guys, all of their training age has come from the Tampa Bay Rays. They grow up, a lot of them grow up on, wherever they grow up in Latin America, and a lot of what they do is just baseball training, just skill training to be able to get signed and pursue their dream of professional baseball. So once they arrive, it's usually they see a weight room for the first time. So it's pretty cool keeping a log of these guys, and we have their training age. We have the things we're tracking, and a lot of the guys in the organization, including our people that work internationally, do a really good job of building these guys up, and it's really cool to see the progression. And you're right.
Yeah, because so you've got technical specialists, we'll say, that are uh, non-conditioned, not unconditioned, and of course they've got some conditioning skills, but really they've been working on their baseball skills, their technical skills, without a lot of strength conditioning. So, how do you, with your almost fluent Spanish, how do you get them to buy in? Like, what's the process for them to just come up? Of course, they're going to do whatever you say because that's going to lead them in the direction they want to go to get out of the country they're coming from and to make the United States. But I mean, is there a tremendous amount of effort required for buy-in?
Yeah, for sure. And you'd like to think that guys, would trust you right off the bat, or think you have their best interest in mind. You're doing everything for them, and to me, that's how I feel. But it's not always the case. I'm probably going to give you a little bit of a cliche answer here, but I think it's cliche because it's true. Um, Building relationships to me is about caring for them more than just athletes. They're people, they're human beings. And a big first step for me was doing everything I could to learn the language. Um, if you can't speak their language, it becomes really hard. Not to say it's impossible, but I've put a lot of effort in the past few years to work on my Spanish and be able to connect with these guys on a human being level. Um, so relationship building, right? The classic thing that people say. I think some things for me that's maybe a little bit more specific, maybe we'll provide some more context. And this is just me as a person, as a coach. I always like to greet my athletes before I start telling them what to do, before I start telling them what mobility drill, how to start warming up. I always like to greet my athletes with a fist pound, tap on the back, a physical touch, and something verbal, just to say, hey, good morning, like we're here. And then I'll start my session. So that's just me personally. Instead of getting a group of athletes and just blow the whistle, go, go, go. I do like to connect with them on a human level before the session starts. And then another cliche thing is like get to know them as people. Like, what do they like to eat? What was it like when they grew up? When you hear some of the stories from some of these guys, you'll never believe like they had 9 brothers and sisters, um, and their culture and their upbringing was just something that you just don't see a lot in the States. And it's really, really cool getting to know them on that level. Um, so that's kind of my take on how to build buy-in. I mean, they're people. They're not just athletes. They're not just dollar bills. They're people. They're human beings.
Sure, we're talking rookies too. So every year's a new year for you then. Yeah,
Hmm.
because you're only a rookie once, and then you move in one direction or another. So this is just kind of like, I won't say Groundhog Day, but every year is a new year for you from the sounds of it. Is that true?
Yeah. So we do have some guys that will recycle, for lack of a better term, and redo a rookie ball year. Um, but you're right in that people are always moving up and down. Um, and sometimes you lose track of what's going on, right? It's a really big structure we have in professional baseball. And just with the amount of rehabs coming down, the guys that move up, guys that come back down, guys that come up from the Dominican Republic Academy, it's a lot going on. um, but I guess to your point, it's nice to have a similar environment and a weight room and a staff that you can trust to just attack any challenge or any new athlete or any new group that comes in. A lot of credit to the people around me and how much they help.
All right. Speaking of weight rooms, what does your weight room look like? What are the toys that you have?
Ooh.
The aside from the typical stuff, which I can imagine there's probably a few squat racks, there's a bench or so, but no, something that's more along the lines of baseball conditioning.
Hmm. We have a masterpiece. I love our weight.
Really?
It's the best weight room I've ever worked in for sure. I mean, I'm on the
Make me
youngest.
drool. Go ahead, make me drool.
We have the 6 squat racks. We have gym aware. We have safety bars. We have a booty builder machine, which is fairly unique. You don't see that everywhere. I think what I really like is we have a really good flow. I'm big on flow and having sessions flow in a proper manner. And we have a really nice flow in that. Our building is separate. So our athletic performance center is separate from anything else. It's its own building. And when you walk in, you have our warm up side, which is basically all of our soft tissue, all of our warm up stuff, all of our cardio equipment. And then we have I want to say like 30 to 40 yards of turf with sleds. We also have some curved treadmills. We have our fueling station right there. That's all when you walk in. So that's kind of like our warm up side. And then as they flow through their warm up or whatever they have for the day, then they'll go to our weight room side, which is just expansive, like really good outdoor lighting. We have all the squat racks. We have dumbbells up to 120. We have Kaiser machines, GHRs. So like more than like the fancy equipment, I'll say the thing that's really cool for us is just the way the weight room is set up, and the flow of it. It is,
Tell me more. How's the flow work?
I'd say that's the biggest part. Like the warm up side is on the right and the weightlifting side's on the left. So
Oh,
just
okay.
without even like talking about programming or the way you set up a session,
Got it.
it's like very natural. Like I'm big on like environmental design and just setting stuff up in a way where the athletes aren't even thinking about it, but it's happening. Like I rolled into a weight room like, okay, this is where I might as well grab a foam roller and start to do some soft tissue, or I might as well start to do some mobility on the ground-based stuff because the turf's right here. Sometimes they don't even think about it. Another example of that is just like our protein shakes. So like we have protein shakes ready after every lift, and it's like they don't even think about this stuff, but they're getting protein right out the door every lift. So I'm big on that stuff. So I think that's my biggest point with the weight room is like the environment and the flow and the setup is is moving in the direction we want these guys to work.
And do you have trainers or massage therapists or PTs where they've got their tables in the conditioning room too, so they can go back and forth working on the body, then putting them into some lifts or movements, or is that exclusive into another location? How's it work with that?
Rarely do we have our sports medicine professionals in the weight room doing work. We do have AT tables there, where we'll do a lot of kind of our baseline screenings or our test retest stuff throughout the course of the year. But rarely do we have our ATs, PTs doing work there in the weight room. A lot of that happens in the alternate, I guess you call it alternate site. We kind of have two big buildings, and they're more in the main
Uh,
building. So we do have it available to us. It's just something that doesn't happen too often outside of like testing and retesting.
got it. And so, speaking of testing and retesting for yourself as strength and conditioning coach,
Mhm.
for them, what's in your battery of tests and assessments? What are the things you really want to know?
Hmm. Good question. I think a lot of people, I think the industry as a whole will oftentimes test too much and get all these numbers and get a lot of data that ends up not being that practical. Um, so for me, this is just me speaking individually. This has nothing to do with kind of what we do. Um, I just feel like I could go a long ways with a Nord board, a GPS monitoring system, and a force plate. And those stuff costs a lot of money, but um, I just think those three things are so valuable from what I've seen in the past and my experiences here. We use those a ton and they're helpful for programming decisions, fatigue monitoring. Um, I find a lot of value with those three.
And I can see how that would be,
Mhm.
especially GPS and force plate,
Mhm.
because you're going to look at levels of fatigue, asymmetries, power production. How do they derive it? The hard thing with those, I would think, but maybe you can enlighten me a little bit more, is how you measure like rotary power.
Mm, mm.
If you would, if you're interested in that kind of thing. But I think that, with baseball, it's so much rotary movement that I would think that there would be kind of a question as to how powerful is this athlete? How are they deriving their power? Do you ever focus on that?
Me personally, in my head, yeah, that one keeps me up at night sometimes. Because I love the Proteus machine. I'm an avid
Yeah.
I'm an advocate of the Proteus. I've had some experience with it in the past.
You
Um,
got one?
so when I was at Cressy Sports Performance, like we were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
and I've been able to experiment a ton with that and see different programming strategies with that. And obviously Cressy has its own test on the Proteus machine, which is pretty cool. Um, but to me, when we talk rotational power, and getting plane specific with the power, man, the Proteus, I haven't seen much better than the Proteus. I know people like to track med ball throws with velocity, um, but the Proteus is just the objective data it gives you. Especially when you start to rank that up and get comparative with the results as to other athletes, or what big leaguers look like, or what have you. I think it becomes really useful.
Heck yeah. Now, we've got a buddy of mine here in Santa Cruz who does a lot of baseball conditioning, youth baseball primarily, but he's got one over at his facility, and I've been wanting to get over there and play around with it with him. So tell me this then, Victor, when you have something such as like a Proteus and it's on your Christmas list,
Mhm.
how do you go about communicating that to the organization? I know that one team compares to another. It's all different depending on their economic strength and well-being and so on. But how does it go? If you do you just put in a acquisition kind of a request form, or you just keep talking to somebody's ear and hopefully somewhere down the road you get it? What does that look like?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I have a good answer for you on that one because I don't know the answer myself. You know, I try to just be present and do a really good job with where I'm at. I don't know if I'm at the position where I make those type of calls. But what I can say is our staff is always talking about ways to get better, things we could utilize. So I like to think when big decisions like that in terms of equipment, and we're talking budget and monetary value, I like to think the best way that those things come about is just naturally, based on what you're seeing with the athletes. And that could be anywhere. When you're seeing a flaw or a deficit in what you're doing and what you're programming, um, and like, man, I just feel like we don't have enough rotational power testing in our program. How do we know guys are getting better at hitting, or how do we know guys are throwing harder? Um, well, have you heard about this new thing, the Proteus? Like that, to me, that's kind of how those conversations come, like organically. I don't have a really good answer to say, like, oh, you just go to
Ah.
the president of the team and yeah, you shoot him an email. I don't know. But we've had some good conversations organically about some things maybe that could help us. So I like to think that's how those things come about.
No, I like it. That's great. Okay, so we all have our biases, right? Based on our own unique experiences. So when it comes to strength conditioning and your time in the weight room, you have bias towards certain moves over other ones. And so this is a two-part question. What are you biased toward in regards to strength conditioning programs? What is it you really want to have in your program because of your own personal experience? And what are the things that you shy away from?
Hmm, that's a really good question. Um, Kind of when I think about my philosophy, to me, I think there's two big things to start with. Like I'm a big believer in a foundation. You can't build a house if your foundation isn't strong enough in the bottom. Classic analogy. I believe in that. To me, a foundation is an adequate level of strength. Because strength has downstream benefits and all the other adaptations and things you're looking to get out of an athlete. So in our foundation, I think you have strength and I think you have movement quality. So to me, that's kind of our first two big buckets. And this is not speaking on behalf of the Rays. This is just my individual thought process. Um,
Mhm.
if we can get guys a baseline level of strength, whether it's relative to body weight or not, and then we can get them to move really well. I think we're putting them in a really good position to succeed, and at the very least, allow our skill coaches to do what they need to do to get guys better from a skill specific standpoint. Because there's just a certain threshold where if athletes don't have adequate strength and adequate movement, like if they can't squat, hinge, push, pull, I just find it really hard for them to develop. The professional high level elite athletic qualities I need to perform on the field. So for me, that's my two big ones is build a foundation with strength and movement quality is a good starting point.
Okay, and is it in that order, that in terms of hierarchical importance, that you put strength before movement quality, or quality of movement comes before strength, or is it simultaneous?
I would say simultaneous. And if you wanted me to dig a little bit deeper, for me, like movement quality is our push, pull, squat, hinge, and becoming really good at those things, not only
Oh,
bilaterally but unilaterally. And then for our pushing and pulling, not only horizontal vector but um, also vertical. So like think like landmine pressing, think like pull-ups. Um, to me,
got it.
that's what movement quality is kind of, I don't know if checking all the boxes is the right term, but kind of checking all those boxes in terms of unilateral, bilateral, all the different movement patterns. And then to me, something I've been thinking about recently, like those are push, pull, squat, hinge. Everybody's heard of that stuff. And then you have sprinting, which is another one that's important to do frequently.
Hmm.
And then I've thought about a recent two. Let me see if I can come up. So it was a crawl. So push, pull, squat, hinge, sprint, crawl, and carry. Those are my seven.
Okay.
Yeah, those are my seven. So when I think movement quality, I think um, having an adequate ability and using my coach's eye to define adequate ability to do those seven things and doing them frequently over the course of time.
Okay, I got it. I was thinking in regards to movement quality in terms of joint action coupled with other joints. Like, do you have proper flexion with internal rotation or extension with external rotation or whatever the case may be, looking at it almost by joint basis. But I see what you're saying. They're more the pillars of fundamental strength of the press and pull and so on. Okay, so with that, and knowing that this, you're training rotary athletes, even sprinting is primarily rotation, even though we're sagittal bias in our direction. When you get into the, and I want to geek out with you on this, by the way. So when we're talking about like pressing and pulling, I could see unilateral crossing the plane actions, whether it's pressing or pulling. I could see, if we're talking about level changes and squats, that I want to be in a staggered squat position left and a staggered squat position right, so that I can start to feed rotational components into these moves. Or is that just too dangerous? Is that like, I'm breaking away from that? No, I don't know if I really want to do that.
Yeah,
Where are you?
I don't think it's too dangerous. I think it's like a lot of things in life. You need to build up to it. And you need a good regression progression model to like fill in the blanks along this long-term vision and programming and periodization that you have. Um, just to your point, because you made me think of something, I actually made a note because I didn't want to forget it. Um, to me, an important part of being a good rotator is understanding what neutral is or what your stack is. And to me, a stack is understanding a really good ribs over pelvis posture. Um,
Yeah.
so having a good progression model of like, this is ribs over pelvis, and we're going to attack this in different positions. We're going to go half kneeling. We're going to go split stance. We're going to add a pal off press. We're going to add a row, whatever it might be. Understanding our stack is important, because if we don't have our stack and then we start doing crazy Proteus rotation, blah, blah, bang, bang, VBT, it's like, well, we're just rotating on who knows, lumbar extension, um, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on of like, you don't have the position. And to me, it's only a matter of time. If you can't control your stack and your ribs over pelvis and you're doing all this crazy stuff, it's only a matter of time till some soft tissue or lower back pain, um, comes up. So like to me, when we're talking rotation, starting point is a ribs over pelvis posture. Probably could be a good one to like throw into the movement quality bucket that we.
Okay. Okay, so how do you guide a person? And we're talking about stacking along the vertical axis.
Mhm.
And I know my approach, which would be to send them left, to send them right, and to find their balance point in between. At least that will be their conscious point. That'll be their perceived center.
Mhm.
It may not be the proper center, but how do you how do you encourage, coach, reinforce the stacking of let's just say ribs and pelvis to start with?
Yeah, I get a one of the big cues for me, and I've coaches think differently about this, but as simple as like ribs down, and using my own hands to cue people into like a rib tuck and a posterior pelvic tilt has something that's worked for me. Just talking cues, like
Yeah.
getting the bar extension, which I think is the most common thing that we'll see, like an anterior pelvic tilt, and trying to first get the athlete to understand what the opposite is, and then allowing them to control that through different movement patterns or exercises. Another cue that's worked well for me is like imagine you have a tail, especially when you're doing like a ground-based thing. Imagine you have a tail and your tail's like this. Imagine the athlete is laying supine, and I want you to lift your tail up to the ceiling, and usually they'll get a really good posterior pelvic tilt when you kind of coach them through that. Um,
Love that.
so there's some cues that I use to kind of find it. I don't want to dive too deep down a rabbit hole here, but I'll also throw in when we talk about ribs over pelvis, um, and understanding the stack, and like you kind of talked about balance points and maybe goes into foot pressures and all this stuff. Um, Kind of my past experiences, I've learned a lot. I wouldn't consider myself a master at all, but I definitely have taken bits and pieces, and it's helped my understanding of human movement is the expansion compression model and this whole idea of Bill Hartman's train of thought. And I know Zach Kelpels and Connor Harris put a lot of stuff out on it. I came across it early on in my career, and I don't think I've become a master by any means, but I've taken bits and pieces. And when I think over ribs, when I think about ribs and pelvis and foot pressures and all this stuff, sometimes I look through it in that lens, which sometimes helps me connect some dots.
So do you do some type of structural assessment prior to conditioning? Is that like whether it's posture assessment, joint by joint? How does it work? Because you mentioned like an anterior tilted pelvis. So in my mind, I'm going, okay, so glutes are in an eccentric position, and some will call it weakened. I don't believe in such a thing, but proximal hamstrings are in a lengthened, loaded position. Distal hamstrings are now shortened. Distal quads are lengthened. Proximal quads are shortened, and kind of just follow it all the way down the chain. Lumbars are compressed, abdominals are lengthened. Like, how deep do you go with this, and what does it look like?
Yeah, to me a lot of it to me a lot of it is just my eye now. Like kind of
Hmm.
like you just explained is like a classic lower cross syndrome. Um,
Sure.
right. And like I'll think about it that way sometimes, but this might answer your question too. We do a movement assessment. So I mentioned NordBoard, GPS, and force plates. So we do a pretty thorough movement assessment early on when we get our guys, and occasionally we'll retest things. So that gives me an idea of kind of, we really hit every joint all the way from the ankle up, and that gives me an idea of where guys are at, and whether it's programming prep work or changing exercise selection. It gives some pretty good feedback to make decisions and kind of be specific.
Is that something you've developed yourself, or within the organization, you've got your own methodology?
Organizationally, we have a methodology in our testing battery and our movement assessment. But that's not to say that I don't, get guys on the floor every now and then and take a look at hip ERIR, and things of that nature, just to like, I think this gets mixed up a little bit too. It's like, you do counter movement jumps, and it's like fatigue readiness, and you take all these things and you derive whether a guy is ready or if he's below standard deviations or above. I think it's pretty similar when you look at guys' soft tissue, like hip ERIR. Like, is how similar, and this is just me thinking out loud, like, how similar is that? Like, can a guy's hip ERIR or a guy's soft tissue limitation, when you're just doing like a table test, can that change day to day just like a jump would? I think it would. I don't
Heck
know.
yeah.
But that's why, like, sometimes I'll just get guys on the floor and take a look, like, where are we at today? And then we'll do, oh, you look, okay, let's open up hip IR. Let's do these one or two exercises, and it opens up 10 degrees. And it's like, yeah, I feel better. Awesome. Let's go throw, you know? So I think it's like small things like that. Um,
Huge.
yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. So is curious, you take them to the floor, so you're doing primarily open chain assessments, but you must get them up and moving. So you're looking at closed chain mechanics too? Or do you just go, well, if I can't do it in an open chain, likely I'm not going to be able to do it in a closed chain. So why even look?
Yeah, to me, it's like if I watch them do, let's say we have a group activation going, or if we're doing our lift, or if they're moving around on their own. To me, it's like a coach's eye type of thing. That'll be like my open chain and see where they're at, and then when I get them to the floor, that's kind of my lens. That's the way I do it. Like I said,
Hmm.
I wouldn't consider myself a master at this stuff at all, but that's kind of the way I do it. I have a quick assessment stuff that I'll do on the floor to give me an idea of some things that might open them up or help. And we kind of just go from there. And to be honest with you, I just use a lot of feedback like from the athlete. Hey, we just did a couple things. It took about 5 minutes. Like I want you to be brutally honest. Did that make a difference? And I do that a lot because I don't always know. Like I experiment a lot. I think that should be a part of what we do as coaches, as long as it's safe to fail. And to me, doing breathing exercises and doing some postural stuff that's mainly breathing, and not any load, to me that's very safe to fail. So I'll do a lot of experimentation, and if guys feels like it helps, then we run with it. And if not, I say thanks for letting me learn and get better. And they usually just
And,
laugh.
and how much freedom, how much license do you have in terms of creativity? I'm sure there's a certain parameters you must maintain, but how much creative process are you allowed?
Hmm. I don't know if I could put a good number on that. I could just talk on my thought process for it. I don't even know where I heard this. I'd be guessing. I want to say Bouchek Snyder, but I could be totally wrong with that. It might have been Altus. I don't know. But somebody that I came across in the past made this comment about all the programs you write, 10 to 20% of them should be experimentation based, because that way as long as they're safe to fail, experimentation, because that way you're getting better as a coach and you're not just recycling or using the things that you think is right or you're always right. Um, and that's something that's just stuck with me over the course of time. Like when I feel myself getting stagnant with like regression progression models that I'm really comfortable with, I always want to take a step back, look at the big picture, and am I missing anything here? Or talk to my staff. My staff keeps me super accountable. They're awesome. Um, and like, am I experimenting enough? Am I really being creative enough with these guys? Am I really getting them better? Um, so I think to answer your question, sometimes I have to take a step back and just make sure I'm doing the best I can for them, but also getting better as a coach.
Well, if I had to guess, I'd say that was Boo that you got that stuff from. He's
Yeah.
always looking for more insight. Good guy. Um, so who makes up your performance team? Like when it comes to your training and medical staff, is it pretty similar to the majors, or are you wearing a lot more hats than you would if you were up in the big league because you've got somebody taking care of this or that?
I'd say in professional baseball, it's gotten to the point where um, the duties are pretty specific. Um, like not in a bad, this is not in a bad way I'm saying this, but there are silos um,
Mhm.
and departments that are built out to achieve certain goals. And so we have a pretty good setup here. We have three strength coaches. Andrew Mitchell, which I think he's been on the podcast in the past. Um,
Yep.
we have another one who's a seasonal employee with us. We have a rehab strength coach here. So we have four that are almost in the building every day outside of some travel. Um, and then we have several ATs. We have a couple PTs that work more on the rehab side. Um, so we have a really good group. That's just kind of AT, S&C. We have a ton of skill coaches. We have a ton of performance science staff that do a really good job. And really, the hardest part of all that stuff is making sure you're good at collaborating. Buzzword, ding
Who do you
ding.
collaborate the most with, and who do you collaborate the least with?
The most important people to collaborate with is your team. Because I think when people talk about collaboration, they start talking about all these other departments and things. Like first and foremost, like your team is your team. Like I'll go to bat for my guys any day of the week, my guys and girls, my guys and gals, any day of the week. So that's like my first line of communication. Like we got to be on the same page. Make sure the morning meeting is on point, and just touching base on all the things we need to talk about. So that's number one for me. So definitely my team. And I think you kind of get a liking for certain people, wherever you are, whatever career you do. And as long as you think that, they have the best interests of the athletes in mind and they really care, you just kind of gravitate towards them. So I have people like that, here with the Rays. I'd say to communicate the least. Oof. Well, I'm pretty bottom of the totem pole, so maybe front office.
They know who you are, though.
I hope so.
Okay, so what's your season looking like right now with your team? Are you coming to the end? I mean, it's a shorter season compared to the majors, so you must be in. Are you almost to the playoffs right now?
So we just finished our last game.
Hmm.
Pretty interesting structure. We had something called Bridge League this year, also known as Instructional League in the past, where essentially we're playing exhibition games um, since the season ended about 6 weeks ago, maybe 2 months ago. So we had our Florida Complex League is what it's called throughout the course of the year. And then since then, we've been kind of doing this Bridge League slash instructional league thing where the emphasis is really development, especially physically. We've been fortunate to have guys in the weight room 4 times a week, doing upper lower splits, which has been awesome. I think we've made some really awesome physical changes there. And then they're also playing 2 to 3 games a week. So it's been nice to kind of have the emphasis and make sure we're on point and doing everything we can to get the guys better. So with all that said, the last game was today, and we're finishing up our last week here at the spring training complex.
And then what happens to you after that? What are you doing?
So we have a strength camp this year. So we'll be doing stuff, up until the dead period. The dead periods is this new thing that kind of, I guess you call it legislation by the players union, where there's like a month and a half, kind of around Christmas time, New Year's, where you can't contact any of the athletes. That's a new thing that's in place. And then after the dead period's over, you kind of have more check-in camps. And then next thing you know, spring training's getting starting to rolling around. So for me personally, I'll go back home to New Jersey, have something pretty cool in the works. So I started my licensed massage therapy degree. I'm on week 4 of classes, and
Right on.
yep. So I'll be doing that in person, in New Jersey all off season, which is super exciting for me. I'm stoked, and it's been a nice even start to the journey.
That's great. I'm glad to movement and manual kind of work should go hand in hand, and it's nice to get them both together. So how long is massage school for?
So it's a 10-month program. They were super flexible with me. I got really lucky. So kind of for the past month or so, I've been all online on Zoom. Um, versus the whole program is in person. So they've been flexible with me personally because of my situation. And then throughout the
Mhm.
course of the off season, I'll be there in person, and then go back to spring training and kind of finish up everything on Zoom, get as many clinical hours as I can, and then kind of cross my T's, dot my I's, hopefully during the All-Star break next year. So about 10 months.
Right on. And then not only is it just acquiring skill, knowledge, and experience, but how do you see that folding into your role with Tampa Bay? Or isn't it? Is it just like your own intellectual and personal pursuit?
Yeah, I'd say more so
Yeah.
individual. For me, as of right now, um, maybe this provides some context. Um, the New York Yankees, the Arizona Diamondbacks, and the Los Angeles Dodgers all are all organizations, to my knowledge, that have a lot of strength coaches with their LMTs in professional baseball. So that's something that I kind of came across in the past and I thought was really interesting and kind of sparked my interest in all this stuff. Um, but my answer to that question would kind of be a three prong answer. Um, I think first and foremost, people talk about learning and being a forever learner. And for me, I know I have to systemize things and have a fairly rigid schedule. to do what I need to get better and to keep learning. And for me, this was kind of a no-brainer in that, like, yeah, I'm back in a classroom and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to stay curious and be open-minded and make it happen. So to me, systemizing, like learning and just having that growth mindset and keep pushing, was big. So that was number one for me. I think number two, to your point, is like, I watch movement, human movement for a living. That's kind of what I do. And I believe in having different lenses to look at things, kind of like expansion, compression, and push pulls, hinge, like the things we talked about. And to me, kind of this anatomy, connective tissue, soft tissue, manual work is like another lens that I could view human movement. And lastly, I don't know exactly how this will work in my scenario, but this is something that I've heard of before. Potentially, now that a strength coach has an LMT, they have the ability to help the workload of some of the athletic trainers and some of the physical therapists. So that would be an added benefit to, because they do a lot. I mean, athletic trainers are awesome. They always have so much on their plate. There's a lot of things to do. So to be able to help them and take things off their plate and also help the athletes at the same time seemed like a good opportunity to provide value. So that's kind of like my three-prong answer. That was my big decision-making process with all this stuff.
Yeah, I think it gives you a much more comprehensive approach to work with your athletes when you can get your hands on them. And I know in our industry it's supposed to be hands off, but I struggle with that, and I've been struggling with it for so many years. Okay, well, we can assist them with PNF and we can spot them, but when it comes to getting them to move better through a little pressure point, trigger point, or a little soft massage here, no. Like, what's that all about? There's just, I don't know if it's fear based or what, but I'm glad you're going through that. And I'm excited for you to learn all that because it's just going to make you more full rounded of a professional. So, right on with that.
Thank you.
Anything else that gets your perspective, like that your eyes are drawn to, or your brain is like, aside from the Proteus and aside from that massage now, but anything else you're like, yeah, man, I want to dive in there for sure.
Yep. Yeah, there's another one. So I got Proteus, I got the LMT, and then something I've been really interested by for the past few months, I'd say, is the CPSS. So the CPSS,
Uh-huh.
the NSCA's new sports science certification.
Yeah.
I think like a big boom, like a big drop the mic moment for that certification. And I don't want to be the guy that like loves letters and alphabet soup behind his name. It's just like another way to learn. And I like the NSCA. I like what they do. So why would I not learn from what they have going on? It's kind of my take on it. But
Hmm.
the drop the mic moment was like, I think they mandated in the MLS that every club has to have a CPSS. Have you heard that?
I have not heard that necessarily, but I would not be surprised. I think at least a sports scientist, and whether they're certified through the NSCA or not. But yes, every team must have a sports scientist.
Okay. So I found that when I heard that, I found that super interesting, and I was like, wow, they're really making a push with this stuff. Um, so that's kind of on my radar. I don't know
Sweet.
with the LMT this offseason how feasible it would be, but definitely on the radar because I think this is like if you think about all the stuff you do as a strength and conditioning coach, like to be able to do the coaching stuff, which we had already had a good conversation about, and then to be hands on, and then to have like the load monitoring, the sports science background, to me, that's like really encompassing of what we do on a day-to-day basis. So I think it would just provide a lot of value and help me, really understand what we're trying to do here.
Hell yeah. And also outside of the weight room as well. I mean, you're with sports science, you're looking at sleep cycles and nutrition and appropriate rest periods aside from sleep and a whole bunch more. So it broadens your horizon and takes you out of the gym so that you can get the most out of your athletes for them, for their own benefit. So that's exciting. Yeah, I can see how you'd want to do that for sure. So, Victor, whenever I have an engaging guest, the time just goes by like you would not believe. And here we are with just a few minutes left. It's no surprise. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. You got some great answers, very thorough. I'm just wondering when it comes to like social media, if I wanted to follow you in your pursuits. Of course, we got LinkedIn on the professional side, but you're too old for Facebook. So are you TikToking or Instagramming? What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm Instagramming it. I've been trying to put some more content out there, hopefully to help people and provide value. But my Instagram is Suave Strength, Suave_strength. And then my LinkedIn is obviously more professional side, but I've been putting some more stuff out there. And hopefully I can stay active, this off season, and feel free to reach out to me on all that stuff.
Yeah, well, you're about to kick off to a really fun off season from the sounds of it. And I can't thank you enough for coming on here and spending some time with me. Give my best to Andrew and the rest of the crew there. Hopefully our paths are going to meet pretty soon in the off season, but we'll see how that goes. Thanks for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Rocky.
Well, that's another one in the books. I want to thank Victor for coming on, as well as the Rays organization for allowing this to occur. Don't forget to go to my website, rockysnyder.com, sign up for the posture-based soft tissue mobilization workshop occurring in Capitola, California, November 3rd. And you'll get, obviously, CEU credits for it. And if you can't make it there, don't forget our online courses. You can take those and get credits as well. SetantaCollege.com is a place to go for your Master's of Science degree. Enter RS10 at SetantaCollege.com to get 10% off your tuition today. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.